Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alamin. Wassalatu wassalamu ala ashrafil anbiya mursalin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. First of all, thank you very much, Dr. Muhammadul Hassan, our MC, who was deprived of introducing the speaker. Secondly, my dear brother, Associate Professor Dr. Hafiz bin Zakaria, the director of the newly created center, that is the Center for Malay World and Islamic Civilization. Forgive me for forgetting, first of all, Professor Rahmat Ahmad, the newly elected Dean of Islamic Revealed Knowledge and Human Sciences, and Brother Usman. Well, colleagues and friends, there are so many of you for me to mention your name individually. I'm very pleased that you have responded to my invitation. But first of all, let me finish my salutation just now. Auzubillahi wassalatu wassalamu ala ashrafil anbiya mursalin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Can someone help me with the, just put, oh yeah, it's already there. Yes, you are very much aware the topic of our discussion in my lecture today is the Malays, their origin, migration, and travels. It's not coming up. Shall I use this or this? This or this? This one.
This one.
Oh, this one. Okay. All right, and then we'll go ahead to the topic of the day, that is the Malays, their origins, migrations, and travels. I begin with a prologue. This lecture will concentrate on the Malays, specifically their origins, migrations, and travels. The term Malays here refers to both the restricted and the more general meanings. Geographically, the discussion will cover the Malay archipelago as well as the Malayo-Polynesian world. It will begin with history and quickly move on to prehistory, ending with the current scenario. The discussion will be based on findings in history, archaeology, oceanography, genetics, linguistics, and folklore. The last two are part of my specialties. Now let's go to history, first of all. Historically, the name Malay or Malayu has been known since the time of the Greek Egyptian scholar Ptolemy in the 2nd century. To him it was Malau Kolon. By the 7th century, there was already a kingdom by the name of Melayu near Jambi in Sumatra, or Maloyo as it was known to the Chinese. It was later incorporated into a bigger kingdom, then empire, called Sriwijaya, which was based at nearby Palembang. Though based in Sumatra, the empire had tremendous influence on other islands in the archipelago, including Java. For example, its king Dramindra built the Borobudur in 770 of the Common Era. And Samaratunga, another king of Sriwijaya, completed it in 825 CE. This simply shows the power of Sriwijaya and influence. Sriwijaya remained in power until the 13th century and had a long-lasting effect on the Malay archipelago. Numerous groups in the archipelago identified themselves as Melayu or Malays, with their homelands called Tanah Melayu, Malay land. This includes Jambi, Palembang, Minangkabau, Siak, Kampar, Rokan, Panay, Kampe, Aru, Mandailing, Tumiang, Perlak, Samudra, Lamuri, which is Aceh, and Barus in Sumatra, as well as Langkasuka, Kedah, Kelantan, Pahang, Patani, etc. in the Malay Peninsula, except for Java, which was also under the influence of Sriwijaya, but the Javanese were quite adamant they kept to their Javanese ethnicity. This is one of the maps showing the extent of the power of Sriwijaya and border of Sriwijaya. The common identity with a shared homeland, as described earlier, made it easy for the Malays to move around the archipelago without feeling as strangers. What more with Bahasa Melayu, the Malay language, as the lingua franca. Thus, when Parameswara, for example, moved from Palembang to Singapura, 1389, and then to Malacca, 1202, where he started a new empire, he was not a pendatang, not an immigrant. He and his followers simply wandered or merantau from one point to another within their vast homeland, which I have referred to as Tanah Melayu earlier on. This fact of history is not properly understood now by many in Malaysia and more so in Singapore. Thus, some ignoramus here in Malaysia still regard Malays in the two countries as pendatang. You often hear this being said, sometimes by Malays themselves. Whereas for point of fact, they are not pendatang at all. And we are still talking about history. We'll go to prehistory after. Now let's return to Sriwijaya. Sriwijaya had a long history of mercantile and religious ties with both India and China, two superpowers again of the time. Around 860 of the Common Era, for example, Raja Balaputra of Sriwijaya built a monastery at Nalanda University in the Pala territory. In 1006, another Raja of Sriwijaya constructed a vihara in Nagapattinam. This is precisely the port city where Hang Tuah landed on his way to Vijayanagara. That's another story for another time. In 671, a Tang dynasty monk, Ising, stopped by Sriwijaya and Kedah, which is Kedah, on his way to Nalanda, India, to study Buddhism. In Sriwijaya, he studied Sanskrit and Malay languages, not only Sanskrit, but also Malay language. for 6 months before proceeding to India on a ship belonging to the Raja of Sriwijaya. I'm highlighting the ship now because later on I will be concentrating on the ship and sailing activities of the Malays. Later, Isheng returned to Sriwijaya again and stayed for from 689 to 695, that is about 7 years, studying various aspects of Buddhism under a local Pandit named Sakya Kirti, a Malay Pandit named Sakya Kirti. Later, Isheng returned, according to Isheng, at the city of Boga, which is Palembang, where he studied, there were around 1,000 priests at that time. This is just to emphasize the fact that Sriwijaya was both a center of trading as well as religious activities. Of course, at that time, it was not Islam, it was Buddhism. Due to Srivijaya's famous status as a trading center and a center for the study of Buddhism, and also due to the fact of the good nature of the Malays, Isheng suggested that Chinese students of Buddhism should study first in Sriwijaya before proceeding to India. So he was telling his students and future students of Buddhism, if they want to study Buddhism before moving on to Nalanda, go to Sriwijaya first. And again, of course, when they were in Sriwijaya, they had to study 2 languages, Sanskrit as well as the Malay language. So don't belittle the Malay language. It was studied by the Chinese at that time. Isheng referred to the Malays, now with regard to the name Malays. According to him, the Malays were known as Kunluns. Regarding their name, he noted that, this is a quotation from him, Kunlun people have curly hair, dark bodies, bare feet, and they wear sarungs. He was stating facts. If you have access to pictures regarding the ambassador of Lankasuka to China, he was also barefooted. He was wearing sarung, Prahajma, not like you and I. So he was telling the truth. And he was also saying the truth about the name, Kunlun. Actually, the term Kunlun, as a reference to the Malays, had been in use for ages. I mentioned earlier about Ptolemy referring to it in the 2nd century as Malayu Kulun. A 3rd century Chinese historian, Wan Zhen, referred to the Malays also as Kunlun. So were the Chinese of the Tang dynasty from the 7th to the 9th centuries. When they talk about the Malays, they say Kunlun, Kunlun. And even today, our Javanese brother in Java still use the term Kolun or Kolau or something. Yeah? What's the term? Kulo. Yeah, kulo. Sometimes meaning aku, saya, hamba. Alright? That's the way the Malays introduced themselves in the past. Even now also when you speak to some people, you say saya or hamba. Alright, we move on. Back to Wan Zhen. According to him, I'm taking this from Wong Gangwu, the Kunluns were great sailors and traders. They built and sailed large jongs or ships, known as Kunlun boat. Extraordinarily large. So they were referred to as Kunlun boat, meaning kapal orang Melayu. Ya. Measuring about 200 feet long, 20 feet high above water, with 4 sails, and normally carrying a cargo of 900 tons, with 600 to 700 people. We're talking about a very, very, very big ship, actually, known either as Jong among the Malays or Kunlun Bo among the Chinese, up to the Tang century, the Tang dynasty. A typical Jong was larger than Mendam Brahi, the famous ocean-going vessels of Sultan Mahmud Shah of Malacca, which was only 180 feet long, with 3 sails, 100 paddles, and normally carrying about 400 fighters. This is the Mendam Brahi, a fact which is not much known. Not known at all, I think. I myself was not aware of it until I came across this book. The Chinese at that time learned a lot from Malay shipping technology. The great tradition was still there at the time of Malacca, as witnessed by Mendam Brahi just now. And according to the Portuguese writer, the famous Portuguese writer Tom Pires, in his Suma Oriental, 1515, in Canton, the Jongs of Malacca were usually asked to anchor far from the harbour. When they saw the Jong from Malacca coming, they knew it because of its size, and the harbour master would say, go and anchor yourself far away. Why? This is because their big size could be dangerous to Chinese ships, which were mostly smaller. This is a big culture, a big civilization, Chinese civilization, but their ships at that time were much smaller than Kunlun Bo, much smaller than Malay ships. In fact, Malacca's Jong were also bigger compared to the Portuguese galleon. On my left is the Malacca's Jong, on my right is the galleon of the Portuguese. So the Portuguese galleons were much, much smaller compared to the Kunlun Po, because it was smaller also compared to the Malacca Jong or Mendam Brahi, for example. These are point of fact which are not normally available, not made known, especially to the Malays, and thus making them having that feeling of inferiority. Dear professors, brothers and sisters, let me go on. Walaikum salam, please come in. Oh, our brother, coming. Yes, coming. Alhamdulillah. He has just returned from Malacca. My friend. All right, you come at the right time. Prof, kah? Dato, masuk. Tolong bagi kursi. Sini ada satu lagi. Ini contoh pahlawan Melayu. Okay, please. Prof Rahman ada? Ada tempat? Okay. Okay, you come at the right time because I was just talking about Malacca, and now we'll be concentrating on the Malays in China during the Tang dynasty. Okay, during the Tang dynasty, numerous Kunluns, meaning Malays, traveled back and forth to China. They resided there, many resided there, especially in Guangdong, which is the mainland opposite present-day Hong Kong, actually. This includes those who became bodyguards to palace officials. Bodyguard to palace officials. Not like the Nepalese bodyguards to any Tom, Dick, and Harry here, but these were bodyguards to palace officials. These were pahlawan-pahlawan Melayu, actually. Bodyguards to palace official called Kunlun Nu, meaning Kunlun servant, servant to the official. Their prowess impressed the Chinese and became the source of inspirations to amulet makers and especially to authors of the wuxia, that is chivalric romance genre of writing. A short novel, actually, romantic novel. So this Kunlun, they became Kunlun No, they became source of inspiration for these writers, which I will go further afterward, and also for amulet makers. Makers of amulet would make amulets based on their figures, and then sell to high-ranking Chinese elites to be buried with their dead fathers or grandfathers, so that these Malays would become their teman dalam kubur. But I will not go to that. I'm going more to the literary side. In literature, I mentioned about this wuxia genre just now. An interesting example of the genre is the famous story of Kunlun Nu, written by P. Zing, 825 to 880 of the Common Era, which portrays a Malay martial arts expert named Mole, who is invulnerable, who could fly, and who has other supernatural abilities or characteristics. On my right is one of the illustrations that you can find easily in the internet, but of course you wouldn't understand unless you listen to this lecture first. There's a picture showing Mole, the martial art expert, flying from roof to roof, from roof to roof, carrying his master, Hui, and the master's sweetheart. And being a romance, the ending is very interesting. The sweetheart falls in love with the Mr. Kunlun. It's not written by a Malay. No. This is written by the one I mentioned just now. What's her name? Yeah. In the Tang century, during the Tang dynasty. That's Kunlun, by the name of Mole. All right, we move on. Also very interesting here. Oh, sorry. Based on the romance written in the Tang century, during the Tang dynasty, a Ming dynasty playwright by the name of Mei Dingzhu, 1549 to 1615, wrote a play this time titled How the Kunlun Slave Became an Immortal. He was an immortal actually because he said of his past deeds. Brothers and sisters, Heroic figures and stories like these had for ages been the models, not only for the wuxia genre of literature, but also for martial arts such as the wudong kung fu, the flying kung fu, as well as the Chinese opera and film, with heroes capable of flying. They were all inspired by the Kunlun Nu stories, first written in the Tang, during the Tang dynasty, and then repeated again and again, even down to the Ming dynasty. Unfortunately, we are not aware of this, and I'm sure our friends, our Chinese friends here, are also not aware of this. Now, this is even more interesting. Oh. Interestingly, the dawn of the 21st century saw Pi Xing's romance, the Kunlun slave that we discussed earlier, adapted into a movie titled The Promise, and it was released in 2005. In this movie, which you could actually watch in YouTube anytime. In this movie, Kunlun, Malay, fights and flies here and there to save his master, this time by the name of Guanming, and the master's sweetheart, King Cheng. Okay, the first picture there shows Kunlun flying, gliding here and there. The one to your left showing him helping Guanming when he was injured. And the final one showing him rescuing Wing Beng, who later, very much like the earlier Kunlun, fell in love with him because she was confused. When he rescued him, when he helped him, Kunlun helped the master. The master was so tired. The master gave him the attire. When he was when wearing the attire, and then he went saving her, she thought that it was her master, and from there they fell in love. This is a Malay in China, repeated over 3-4 centuries actually. So please go back and watch your YouTube. The Promise. You see the figure, very much a Malay figure, although this is an actor imported from Korea actually. They could have imported you.
But I can fly.
Huh? I thought you can fly. Huh?
Did you have the strings?
Oh, no. He didn't need strings at all. He was flying here and there, left and right. All right. Now we leave them and we go to prehistory. But that should be enough actually to come to know things that we didn't know about the Malays in the past. Now going to prehistory, I would like now to concentrate on their origins and migrations. Just now, much more on their travels actually. In the context of prehistory too, the Malays are not immigrants to the archipelago. The idea that they migrated from Taiwan and Yunnan is outdated and false, but this idea is repeated again and again and again. The idea that they migrated, unfortunately, it is still being circulated in the academy and occasionally picked up by politicians, and it becomes very controversial when picked up by politicians. But I think I would blame the academicians ourselves, because we were the one who did not clarify this to them. In studies on the origins of people and their migration, there is indeed such an idea or theory. It is known as out of Taiwan theory. When we were small, when I was studying in University of Malaya, this was the idea fed to me. And I'm sure to most of you, it's the same idea was fed to you, that the Malays were not from here, they were from Taiwan. It's known as the out of Taiwan theory. It is pioneered by the archaeologist Peter Bellwood, especially by way of his writing, Taiwan and the Prehistory of the Austronesian-Speaking People, which was published in 1998. And he was supported, or his ideas were shared by a linguist by the name of Robert Frost. So because of these two, nearly the whole of our academia believe the story that the Malays were not from here. They migrated from Taiwan. Basically, the out of Taiwan theory upholds the idea that around 4,000 years ago, ancestors of the Malay Polynesians migrated from southern China and especially Taiwan to Southeast Asia, and to the numerous islands in southern Pacific and even to Madagascar. We were told that they brought along with them their skills in agriculture and knowledge about the sea. The migration is often illustrated by maps such as the following, which is found aplenty in the internet. This is the so-called out of Taiwan migration theory of the Malays. You see the extent. The extent of the migration is correct, but the source of migration is wrong. It's wrong to say that the Malays came from Taiwan. Dear professors, brothers and sisters, actually, the theory does not have solid evidence. Recent findings, for example, prove the fact that Malayo-Polynesians had already developed agricultural and sea-going skills in the archipelago itself, and very much earlier than what has been stipulated by the early theories. Latest findings by Anthony Dorset and his friends from the University of Wollongong at Gua Moros, Sulawesi in 2013 show that around 39,000 years ago, this region was already populated. And they were already good in making hand stencils. It's not easy to make hand stencils actually. And rusa babi paintings, quite easy, rusa babi painting. On cave walls as the ones below. This is taken from Life Science, October 2014. But I have more important and interesting evidence. A recent finding by Dr. Danny Natawijaya, a senior geologist of the Indonesian Institute of Sciences, is even more significant. It is a megalithic site in the form of a pyramid at Karyamukti village, Cianjur Regency in West Java. The pyramid is called Gunung Padang In Sundanese, it means Mount of Light. According to Natawijaya, the site goes back to the last ice age, which is very, very long time ago. Here is Natawijaya standing proudly beside his findings. And here is the modern day reconstruction of Gunung Padang pyramid. So the Malay world is also one of the areas where pyramids were built. He said, Natawijaya again, I can only conclude that we are looking at the work of a lost civilization and a fairly advanced one. Not only a lost civilization, but also a fairly advanced one. Professors and friends, contrary to out of Taiwan theory, and in line with the above findings, is the out of Sundaland theory advanced by Dr. Stephen Oppenheimer, especially through his book Eden in the East, the drowned continent of Southeast Asia, published in 1998. Oppenheimer is a scientist from Oxford and a frequent visiting professor to University of Science Malaysia, a very close associate of Professor Mokhtar. Last month he was there with us. His theory is based on findings from history, archaeology, oceanography, genetics, linguistics, and folklore. This is a very popular book now, Eden in the East. Let's hear more about what he has to say. Oppenheimer believed that during the global glacial maximum about 16,000 years ago, before the last ice age, the last ice age was 11,700 years ago. Southeast Asia was a huge continent, double the size of the Indian subcontinent. Double the size. The landmass, provisionally called Sundaland, or what the local would refer to as Benua Sunda, was already a cradle of civilization. Unfortunately, at the last ice age, it was submerged by a catastrophic flood due to the rise in water level. Thus, Sundaland vanished as the lost Eden. And my new Eden is a biblical name, meaning paradise. It was derived from the Sumerian Eden. As shown by the illustrations below, what could be seen left behind is what is now called the Malay archipelago. Here are some illustrations. The one on your left was Sundaland, up to 14,000 years BC. And then when the catastrophe took place, the ice age and the flood, the Benua submerged. And what is left behind are these four mainlands: Borneo, Java, Sumatra, and Semenanjung. The Philippines was already like that before. So we were actually a big continent, a continent, very much part of Asia at that time. Now, what happened when the catastrophe took place? Due to the flood, a great majority of the people of Sundaland migrated to distant lands, meaning to the Philippines and Taiwan and China in the north, to New Zealand in the south, to the Pacific Islands and Easter Island in the east, as well as to Madagascar in the west. In these places, they became early settlers and native. The rest remained behind, the rest of the Malays remained behind and struggle with the new landscapes and ecosystems. The experiences are recorded in their numerous flood myths and migration legends, which has been part of my studies, but I'm not incorporating in this lecture here. I have a lot of flood myths. What I will show you now is more or less the experience that they had at the time. Malay ancestors climbing hills on your left and crossing oceans on the right. Flooding. So they had to climb. Our ancestors who remained here were those who climbed hills. And the hills later on became Semenanjung, Borneo, Sumatra, and Java, parallel with the Philippines. The rest had to flee, of course by boat. But that time, there was no big boats yet like during the Tang period. So most probably they were fleeing in boats like this. Now where did they go? I already mentioned just now. They went up north, they went down south, they went to the east, they went to the west, as far as Madagascar. Imagine that. The art of Sundaland theory has been backed by many scholars from various disciplines, including physics, oceanography, genetics, linguistics, and again folklore. One of them is, curiously, Professor Licio Núñez dos Santos, a nuclear physicist from Universidad Minas Gerais, Brazil, a Brazilian taking interest into our affairs. An ardent believer in Plato's Atlantis story. In 2005, Santos published his wonderful book, Atlantis, the Lost Continent Finally Found, the definitive localization of Plato's lost civilization. He connects it to Plato's discourse, where Plato's mentioned about Atlantis. His business here is not only proving about the existence of such a civilization, but also about saying that it is this civilization that Plato was talking about in his two discourses. In the fascinating book, he declares with certainty that Sundaland is the location of the lost Atlantis narrated in Plato's Timaeus and Critias. These were two discourses where Plato discussed about the lost Atlantis. And Santos say the lost Atlantis is here. Aside from the Ice Age event, Santos adds another point. Santos connects the flood and the migration to the volcanic eruptions of Krakatoa and Toba in ancient times. So it's not only the flood, according to him, but also the eruption, the Krakatoa as well as the Toba. Dr. Hafizi, I hope we can bring either Santos or Oppenheimer here to talk about this. Okay, if not, bring this beautiful lady who's still alive. Ladies and gentlemen, another strong support for the out of Sunderland theory comes from a linguist, comes from linguistics. That is Dr. Johanna Nichols from UC at Berkeley, University of California at Berkeley. She is an expert on migration pattern and the spread of languages. Regarding her study on the Pacific Rim, there is a report about, I quote, an enormous and sustained wave of human migration, which started about 50,000 years ago, somewhere in Southeast Asia. Somewhere in Southeast Asia. This resulted in strands of related languages forming, I quote again from her, a pattern that circles the Pacific Ocean like a necklace. Look at the map below here. Circling the Pacific Ocean like a necklace. Nicole is here referring to specifically Malayo-Polynesians and their global family of languages. Mind you, Easter Island is just here. In Malay, it simply means eyes looking at the langit, at heaven. And Madagascar is here. Look at the spread of the language, and of course, the Malay ethnic groups. On your left is Miss Nichols. Thanks a lot for this discovery, which is close to my area of specialization. We move on. Language is a strong element, which I would say, of cultural DNA. Prof. Zulfalil has always been talking about DNA, but his is more physical. Now I'm adding to this, saying that DNA could also be linguistic and even literary. And equally strong are the oral or folk narrative, the myth, legends, and tales. Many scholars have used folk narrative in studying tribal origins and migration. One such scholar is Michael Stanton, who published The Politics of Taiwan Aboriginal Origins in 2007. In this publication, Stanton records the efforts of George Leslie, a Canadian missionary who worked among the native of Taiwan in 1872 up to 1901. That time, people thought that the native of Taiwan were the original people who moved over here. But now, listen to his observation. Leslie firmly believed that the Aboriginal tribes are all descendants of settlers from around the Malay archipelago. Their legends say that their forefathers came from southern direction. They form the Aboriginal race, and that race is Malay. The Aborigines in Taiwan up to now, they are Malay actually, and they came from here. All right, thank you. There are many group presentation. I came in half an hour late, so I missed the earlier part. But
I find it very interesting because although as an engineer, I've been involving myself in trying to understand all this, you know. So, based on what you have said, among the things that I have queries in my mind, for example, when it has been new things have been discovered by researchers, how do we get it to be formalized, authenticated, and therefore accepted as the truth? I don't know whether the word is truth, but something that is accepted and therefore will get into the history books, you know. For example, when we were young, we learned about the Java man and the Peking man, you know. And what I found later, the Piltdown man was a fake, you know. The archaeologist in UK was trying to prove something, and later he was disputed and his theory was dismissed. So all these things that are being brought up, how can it be made solid and accepted universally? One. Number two, for example, the history of Malacca. In 2012, the government of Malacca, the state government of Malacca, adopted the findings of researchers that Malacca actually existed as way back as 1262, not 1403 as we thought, you know. So they issued a stamp, and God Post Malaysia, they issued first day covers and stamps and so on. But I found this fact has not gone into the history books, you know. Okay, then number three is with regard to all these things, the Sundaland theory and so on, you know. Is it now an accepted thing, and therefore it is embraced by all historians? I find historians and anthropologists and whatever you have in this field, I find that what has been established by the earlier historians, archaeologists and so on seems to become the mainstay, and therefore for you to edge them off, it becomes quite difficult. Number four, Kota Gelangi. I read a blog, I'm not trying to be racial here, but this is written by non-Malays, and they are questioning our government's silence on Kota Gelangi, excavation on Kota Gelangi, because they are accusing that we are trying to hide the actual presence of the Hindus and the Indians and Buddhists in this country, and we just like to establish that this country was actually Malay, you know. So these are the things that, not to say bothers me, I mean, it doesn't really bother me in my retirement, but I would like to get some answers. And
But having said that, we must also go down to those people who are responsible in writing history books used at the school levels. We have to penetrate the curriculum committees, make them understand. But first of all, we must try to get some people to write history books, meaning the textbooks. Because what I have mentioned, I've shown just now, these are not textbooks, these are research books. Research book will remain and linger just around us, but the textbooks will go down to school, to the teachers, headmasters and all. Until and unless we do all these 1, 2, 3, 4 steps, we'll just remain talking like this. You're right, Prof. We have to do something. And I have reminded myself and my friends that we must do something. Let me now take an example before I go to the Malacca case. Example of the Penang situation. We have had a lot of forums, seminars. Prof. Ahmad is one of those champions of the correct position, writing the position of the Malays. But we found that we have not moved much actually. So finally we have embarked now on a huge writing exercise. We have combined the knowledge and know-how of people coming from University of Science Malaysia and those that could be brought in by Dewan Bahasa dan Pustaka. We have now embarked on a publication of the encyclopedia about the Malays in Penang, various volumes of encyclopedia. This will be more or less the formal book that you are talking about, Prof. But of course, we need to also include people who are responsible for the writings of textbooks. Now, going back to Malacca, yes, the situation is the same. Until and unless you get those people involved in the writing of history textbooks, those involved in the curriculum, restructuring of curriculums in Kementerian, will not go anywhere. The Chief Minister can go and cry here and there, but nothing will happen. Now, I'm not sure about the Kota Gelangi, but I'm sure as historians, as scholars, we have nothing to hide, and we should hide nothing. I have hidden nothing just now. I mentioned to you up front, that Sriwijaya was not a Muslim empire. It was a Buddhist, or a mixture of Buddhism and Hindu empire. In fact, it became a hub of Buddhism. For I Ching to say that the Chinese should come first to Sriwijaya and study Buddhism, that is an admission of the fact. Facts cannot be suppressed. As much as we do not want people championing the so-called out of Taiwan theory, we do not want also our own kin to hide anything. Thank you very much. Yes, sir.
What about the book Contesting Malayness that was published in Singapore? What were the objectives and their motives in that? And the second one is the last one. I found the topic of Malays actually real traction for the world. When I read about the case of anti-miscegenation in the US, where a black lady married a white man, and the judge made a ruling on it to charge her, and I think she was in prison. Both of them were in prison, because in the US at that time intermarriage was not allowed. And the judge made a submission or a decision. The Almighty has made the humans of different types. The white, black, red, Malay and yellow. He couldn't find the color for the Malay, and he used the term Malay. And God did not have the objective, put them on different continents, and they are not meant to intermarry. That was a judgment, I think, 1965 or 1967. In the US, the US finally threw off everything. The last of the state dismantled the anti-miscegenation law in the year 2000. My conclusion is that the Malay was an attractive topic, such that in naming the colors, they didn't find the color and they used the term Malay.
Thank you so much, Prof. Very interesting. I'm not aware about the second part of your story, but I can say something about this book, Contesting Malayness, published in Singapore, edited by a friend of mine, Bernard, what's his name? Full name? Timothy Bernard. Because I wrote a criticism on this book when I was holding the chair, European Chair of Malay Studies in Leiden. There were a lot of errors in the book. I pointed out the errors. I cannot recall what these are. Some of these errors were made by Malay writers who were included in the volume themselves. But they are not as much as we have heard here when people say Malays are pendatang, this and that. You know? Although you could read in between the lines. Thank you so much. Yeah. Yes, brother.
Well, this series has already been called the Malay Art of the Book.
Yes.
So I think there is no issue that this is the place for the Malays. The issue is more as to how to pack it with data. Second is
How to pack it?
with the data.
Okay, yeah.
So that's not an issue because the place is already known as the Malay Archipelago.
Mm.
So in other words, the Malays begin to be included. But of course, there should be data. This data should be in the textbook.
Mm.
Secondly, we should also not call Sriwijaya as Hindu or Buddhist kingdom. We just call it Malay Empire. That's it. Only then, at that time, the religion was not Islam. But still, it is a Malay Empire, substantially.
Yeah.
Of course, Prof also need to explain whether Majapahit is a Malay Empire or not. And of course, we also can take note that Sriwijaya actually subdued Raja Melayu. So is Sriwijaya Malay or not Malay Empire? So probably this thing need to be clarified. But I believe that this empire should be not be called as Buddhist Empire or Hindu Empire, but just call it as the Malay Empire. Only then that the religion then was not Islam. That also helps a lot in eradicating the idea that the Malays they are different, but they are actually the natives in this Malay Empire. And then one day, this Lord China Selatan should be changed to Lord China Melayu.
Okay, Prof. My presentation was very much in line with what you said. I didn't highlight about whether it was a Buddhist or a Hindu. I was highlighting all along Sriwijaya being a Malay empire. You know? But if you read between the lines, you can understand that although being a Malay empire, you have to accept the fact that that time Islam was not there yet. And if we talk about Java, of course there have been little petty quarrels between these two brothers, the Javanese and the Malays, as we understand now. You know? And this has been there all this while. You know? But you must also understand the fact that the Javanese have accommodated a lot by accepting Malay language as the basic for Indonesian. Only that they changed the name to Indonesia, Bahasa Indonesia, during the 1928 Sumpah Pemuda, just to go in line with the name of the country. See, in the Sumpah Pemuda, they affirmed that kita satu bangsa, bangsa Indonesia, kita satu negara, negara Indonesia, kita punya satu bahasa. They cannot say bahasa Melayu, they have to say bahasa Indonesia. Although everything is based on Malay. In fact, it is interesting to note that bahasa Melayu managed to hold on in Jakarta for a long time, as bahasa Melayu Betawi. So Jakarta is supposed to be one of the central position for the Javanese, aside from Yogyakarta. Right? Anything else I miss? Yeah.
There seems to be confusion whether Panjab, Javanese, Malays, are they considered Malays or not? But you would fall under, they would fall under one of your.
Yeah, the second category.
So again, this thing should also be made clear to others. Especially like for example in Singapore, Malays would only be Malays. Javanese will not be considered as Malays. So again, this thing
Okay,
made
this
known to as many people as possible.
Singapore, you have to watch out. Singapore has this policy of making sure that the Malays do not unite themselves. There is no unity among the Malays. That's why they would like to emphasize the fact you are a Javanese, you remain Javanese. You are Banjaris, you remain Banjaris.
So that's where a lot of work must be done.
Yes, yes,
to
correct.
explain who are the Malays.
Correct.
Malays in the generic sense
Mm.
would include those who are the inhabitants of the Malay archipelago. Prof is from Madagascar, right up to Easter,
Mm.
and from Taiwan, right up down to where?
That's what I attempted to do just now by categorizing them. You're not fair if you don't categorize them. Yes, Prof.
Assalamualaikum, Dato.
Salam.
I'm not historian, neither expert in comparative religion. But I'm trying to see, when we say Islam is not there yet, but we know that Adam AS is Muslim.
Yes.
Is it possible that even though there are Buddhists, whatever, but there are theories saying that Prophet Zulkifli is actually the one that start the some sort like a Buddhist religion, but I'm not the expert to say that. But maybe the followers already distract from their original deen, religion. But what I'm saying here, there must be a Adam AS root somewhere there in Malay archipelago. Thank you.
That is something that I do not want to venture into because that will open another discussion of which I have no support yet. Yes, Prof. Ajmal. Thank you.
Thank you, Prof. Salleh, for a wonderful talk, as usual. I think in order to address the question asked by the professor from the engineering department, I think one of the things that needs to be understood is that those of us who are in humanities and social sciences do have rigorous standards too. We don't just make claims. And I think maybe one of the ways to look at this, or one of the ways to maybe address this issue, maybe to get Prof. Fadil to answer some questions from a scientific point of view, and to also address the question that you asked. Which haplogroup do the Malays belong to? Does that particular haplogroup also, is that also shared by those who are Banjas or other groups of people, the Sundas? With regards to the mutation factor that is taking place in Malaysia, whether the mutations have taken place to the degree where you can actually look upon them as SNPs, or SNPs as you people love to say, and also what are the subclade areas that has been produced in Malaysia. Maybe that can at least provide some scientific bearing on the question that you asked, because I think these can be substantiated, these claims. Is it true that there was has it been proven that there was a south-north migration, at least genetically? And if so, what have we found?
Thank you, Prof. Ajmal, for your contribution. Prof. Ahmad?
I would like to note a few things. What we've heard today this morning is an attempt to reconstruct the discourse, because you mentioned the book Contesting Malays. That is one indicator over the last 20 or 25 years. It was fashionable to deconstruct Malay identity and Malayness in Malaysia. And what Professor Salleh is doing is to reconstruct the narrative of what the Malay is. And I would suggest that this be not only a Malay narrative, but a national narrative. It should be a national narrative, because what we will be discussing here is only discussed within the ethnicity of the Malays, not within Malaysia as such. That's one. The second thing is, I would like to point the idea of tanah air. The homeland is tanah and air. And Ibrahim Yaakob also mentioned this, tanah air. And the term Malaysia, you see, I think we've heard Malaysia as a nation state, and Malaysia as a word describing the Malay archipelago in the 1600s. And literally, the word Malaysia means islands of the Malays. So that has already been established in French and Italian maps in the 1700s and 1800s. You can see the word Malaysia straddled across the archipelago.
Thank you very much. Yes, Prof. Prof. Husna.
Yes. Salleh, I came especially for you.
Thank you so much. I hope they will not punish us.
Siapa tak sebenarnya Melayu? Saya rasa kita kena banyak bersilat. Alright, and I think I want to share, I want to share the experience of my group at UKM. We have written so far 2 books on science and technology.
Yes.
Satu science and technology di alam Melayu dan satu lagi pencitraan alam Melayu. So when you have a big book, all these engineers and scientists with their, pendapat-pendapat yang
Yeah,
besar
yes.
tentang apakah itu saintis dan literal dan berasaskan kosmologi alam Melayu. Jadi masing-masing mempunyai pendapat dan definisi di manakah Melayu itu bermula. Adakah kita hendak mendapat sejarahnya seperti have you follow my bahasa Melayu UKM? Dari saya secara antropologinya, ya, ataupun secara bahasanya, ataupun definisi yang paling terakhir secara politik dan perlembagaan. Ya. So we cheated. Good. You have to be happy with everybody. You have to take everybody's opinions into question. Sebab kita bercakap tentang reka. We talk about reka. And this will be a lot of Salleh. Dan reka, which is design as engineers, where we formulate artifacts, is very dependent upon your culture, right? And the cosmology of what is Malay aesthetics.
Right.
And Malay aesthetic must come from the value system. That if we want to be as embracing as possible, or if we want to be as close as possible, which is a Malay must wear a sarong and you don't have to go back to that. You have to wear a sarong and profess Malay customs. But what is Malay customs? Alright, must you go and drive a Malay car and eat Malay food, but look Chinese like me. Alright. And so in that sense, when we first started talking to each other, where shall we define Malayness? Sebab kita kena mendefinisikan pemikiran saintifik yang berdasarkan apa? Berdasarkan kosmologi yang Sriwijaya atau berdasarkan kosmologi Islam. So in a way, we did our acrobatics. Ada perkara-perkara yang kita mencakapi lebih mencakapi pra-Islam. Sebab itu adalah sebahagian daripada sejarah kita. Kita tak boleh nak naked that we were part of the Buddha Valley and what have you. Dan kita juga sudah sampai ke tempat sekarang. Dan the reality, our political reality itu kita kena hidup di dalam definisi Melayu yang berdasarkan 3 kriteria tersebut. Jadi when it comes to bila kita describe the construction of the what is Malay technology dalam perahu, kita kena kata di mana ada cadik, di situ Melayu. Definisi kita secara maritim. Di mana ada kapal cadik, di situlah Melayu. That is a wonderful piece of maritime engineering which has remained unsurpassed dalam jasa dunia sampai sekarang. So itu kita embracing. Kemudian bila kita nak melihat titik pemikiran, kita kembali kepada pemikiran berlandaskan Islam. So okay, I'm so sorry, but we cheated and we in our group we have become very embracing. Kalau dalam bahasa kita, sebab tulis dalam bahasa Melayu, kita sangat mendakap.
Yeah.
Sangat mendakap, embracing.
All embracing. Yeah.
Yes, all embracing. And we are safest. Yes.
Dan bahagia dalam dakapan.
Sebab kita selalu guna perkataan-perkataan
Bahagia
yang
dalam dakapan itu.
kan? Berahi, passionate,
Yeah.
mendakap, embracing.
Thank you, Prof. Yes, Prof.
Yeah. I'm a Prof. I'm a colleague of my friend, somebody there.
Oh, okay.
I'm an engineer. I'm just curious, just go back a few steps. You mentioned a few points on your slides. One of it was you mentioned about the break water event where it was mentioned Lake Toba explosion and Krakatoa.
Yeah.
Those are well separate. Toba 70,000 years ago.
Yes.
Krakatoa maybe 200 years ago.
Yeah, Ninos referred to the ancient ones, which I'm not sure which one. Yeah.
Okay, alright. journalists, you mentioned a lot about the out of Taiwan and the out of Sunda land.
Yes.
Are those still hypotheses or they are theories? Are they still at the level of hypothesis? Because the one out of Sunda land has been discussed in recent years and even not so recent years, but it is still considered a hypothesis.
No, it is already a theory. It has been supported by many groups, including the DNA, the genomic groups, the linguistic groups, as I mentioned just now.
So why can't it debunk the...
Yes, yeah. And up to now, no one has tried to debunk it.
But you're trying.
No. I am for the out of Sunderland.
But one is one or the other, or you think both can survive?
No, the others has gone.
Well, the one out of Taiwan is still alive.
No.
Prof, may I just interject?
Okay.
You know, regardless of all these good discoveries, maybe different opinions and all that, if you are honest academic scholars, you might have different points of view, but at least you have your own research and all, you have data to back it. But when it comes to pushing it to a higher level, especially if you want to make it accepted as the common knowledge in textbooks and all that, I found that I've heard it from people. They push for this, but there comes a stage where political interest and experiences will come into play. Okay, the reality in Malaysia is you have people want votes, have the interest of other races to protect, and all these issues, people claiming we are also, the Malays are also pendatang. All this boils down to political interest. The need to debunk our special rights and all that. So they come up with all these data, and when we have the right data to debunk that, they try to stop it from being officially recognized through their political channels. This is a reality, I think, which has to be addressed. But if it cannot be surpassed with our right channels, then maybe people should go on the ground and write their own books in masses. That's what I mean.
Thank you very much.
I don't want to mention names. I think people understand. I think you do.
I think he's referring to powers that be.
Powers that be.
Whoever is in power.
I think a lot of people understand that without even saying this. Melayu sendiri up there, but when because of politics, you need to have money and all that, have pockets supporting it, so they go down to the political experiences.
One more. Yes, Prof.
I'm also not a prof.
Doesn't matter.
Pesara, nama saya Abdullah Faiz. Why I'm saying this, in my line of work, when I introduce my name to a few Arabs, people say, how come you have Arabic names? Of course, you know why we have Arabic names, but to them is Arabic, not Malay. Maybe my name should be awak kecil ke, awak besar ke, and maybe we should start naming our doctors Melon, Untung. Anyway, that's not my point here.
Okay. What is your point, brother?
Coming back to the history, my father is a journalist in RTM, Arwah. This is, you all are historians. You have to confirm this. What I hear from him is just maybe hearsay. He told me two things. When the first New Zealand High Commissioner called to Abdul Rahman, when we got independence, he being a Maori, told the two, I've come home. That one. The second anecdote that I want to tell you is regarding Madagascar. This is what my father told me again. When Krakatoa erupted, the Javanese started paddling away from Java. And they came to this big island, which is Madagascar. And among themselves, they were saying in Malay or Jawa or whatever, Manakah Ka, which could be the origin of the name Madagascar. It's a theory, it's a hypothesis or whatever you call it, historians. That's what my father told me. The third one, I was in Makassar recently with my colleague. We are all from the same school. We went to a museum Of course, the Makassars are Bugis and Taurojas. But in the museum, there was a reference to a few Malays coming probably from Malaya. And there is now in Makassar a masjid called Masjid Melayu. So I'm just trying to relate a story to share with you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Saudara
Can we
Abdullah.
have few questions from our students, please? Sorry, bro.
Okay, let me answer this one first. I would like to answer the last one. In Makassar, there are a lot of Malays actually. This is due to the fact that when Malacca fell, a lot of Malays merantau ke Makassar and established Malay communities there. Ince, what is his name? The writer of Syair Perang Makassar. Ince, he's a Malay. He's a Malay by virtue of having ancestors coming from Malacca. So that's the reason why they relate more to the peninsula than to Java. Even the current vice president also relates more to this side of the story, this side of the channels. The earlier anecdotes that he mentions, coming from your father, I think those must have been stories that have been passed to him from generations to generations. We are not sure about the exact island where they came from. I mean, where they started from upon going to Madagascar. But there are also anecdotes which are not well supported, as I didn't mention, saying that the first few Malays who arrived on the shores of Madagascar were women. Must be very much like Prof. Husna there. Oh, lelaki tak tahan dia. Yang tahan orang perempuan juga. Tino dia kuat. I think he must have heard it from some people, but we are not sure of the point of departure. But for those who went out later years, in the centuries, like those who went to Cape Town and calling themselves Cape Malays, we know for sure that they were from Makassar. They were exiled by the Dutch. The chief among them was Sheikh Yusuf al-Makassari. Thanks to the exile story, Islam was carried to South Africa during that time. And the first mosque in South Africa was founded by Sheikh Yusuf al-Makassari. So your father, I think, must have heard about a lot about stories like that. There was one, thank you sir, there was one question coming from a student there.
No,
Professor, okay, Prof, please, Prof. Prof, yes.
Do you have any book on the position of Malay in Austronesian languages?
The position of Malay.
In Austronesian languages. Because I think some of us are looking for titles to write.
Oh, okay,
Yeah, so
okay.
maybe if we don't have anybody writing on this.
I cannot recall at the moment.
Because I've read, I mean not really read, but there are many Australians working on Austronesian languages. But I'm yet to find one local person working on it.
Prof, Dato Asma have written something about bahasa Melayu di Samudra. Yeah.
The one that she wrote was on the Iban.
No. She's an expert on Iban Malay, but she has also written bahasa Melayu di Samudra, published by our publishers, Dewan Bahasa dan Pustaka. But she was concentrating on those communities in Australia and the pulau-pulau yang berdekatan.
So it's not really
Oh yes, it is part of it. But these are people who migrated there much later. If you are talking about what I was discussing just now, I need to do some homework and come back to you and give some names, titles, some titles. Is that okay? For the time being. Prof. Farida, I have not heard from you.
I was just thinking when I look at the map, Australia was, except for Perth, but as large as part of the continent is not included. But I just remember one of my supervisors in the early 90s came out with this statement that there had been ties between the Aborigines and Malacca, and they had actually artifacts in one of the gurus of this kampung in Aborigine. That's worth looking into. So I was wondering if there is a center in Australia, ANU.
ANU, yes.
Perhaps we could look into this.
Yes.
Because definitely there's been trade ties.
Right.
You know, between Australia and us.
Some
Yeah.
words are the same.
Some words are the same,
But she
of
was
course.
saying there's artifact actually, you know. Artifacts.
Australia in olden times was referred to as Sahul.
They had already that trading and seafaring
Okay, yeah.
movement.
No, in ancient times, when Sunda was still there, Australia was just next door, and it was referred to as
So if
Sahul.
they were in New Zealand, it's impossible that they could bypass Australia.
Yes, yes, yeah.
Definitely there will be movements there.
Right.
The other thing I just read last night was the fact that we talked about the lost Atlantis and also Lemuria, which you did not mention because sometimes they're interchangeable, Atlantis and Lemuria. The fact that the pyramids were there and how the second female pharaoh, Hatshepsut, you know, she actually came over here to pay homage to this pyramid in this region. That again is worth looking into.
That's all very interesting to hear, but I may also cautious myself, put a word of cautious to myself, that some of these are written by indie writers who have their own portals. So we may get carried away by them, yeah? As much as we would like to support them, but sometimes they are too imaginative. Yeah? Saying, for example, like the Malays are descendants of some Jews, Yahudi, yeah? This and that. That is very dangerous to me. Yeah? I only go on discussing those that have materials to support me. But I do read their portals. Very interesting, actually. Anything else?
Can you have the last two questions from our students?
Yes, sir.
Is your presentation?
Thank you, bro. Go ahead.
The perspective that there are many actions taken by the non-Malays, I think, at the present time, to refute or to deny that the Malays are the original people of this Malay archipelago. Especially the question about the say. But I think I find that all these documents being written properly, so that we can, at least can challenge the position that the Malays are not the indigenous people of this area. We can see that earlier we can remember our late Singapore Prime Minister saying that we Malays are also pendatang. With his writer Alex Joshi, I think. And at the present time also, these ideas still penetrating the Malays are refuting our identity as a Malay. Is there any serious step taken by our government to rewrite the history so that we can at least stand that they cannot challenge anymore of our our identity as the original people in this area. I went to University of Malaya recently. There is a center for indigenous studies. I was surprised that when I see the center is the resource for only for the Orang Asli and the people of Sabah and Sarawak. I asked why not the Malays? Indigenous are the Malays not really indigenous? They said the Malays are having a lot of faculty for studying. But this is a step taken by the non-Malays to deny the Malay as the original.
Thank you so much for your positive comment. You are right, actually. We in Malaysia we have not done a lot. In Singapore, it has been made a policy to say that everyone is a pendatang in Singapore.
Another thing, sorry.
Yeah.
There is a movement, a formation of the organization of Orang Asal. Orang Asal consisting of the Orang Asli,
Again,
the people of Sabah and Sarawak.
right.
But what are the Malays? The Malays are not
Correct.
in the,
Yeah.
in the Orang Asal.
Yeah.
And the term Orang Asal, I don't know, it is a new terminology. But the Orang Asli, yes, we have the term Orang Asli, the people of Sabah and Sarawak. But Orang Asal is the only new term, which also excluding the Malays in the organization.
Again, you are correct. The term was not initiated by some academics, but the academicians are keeping quiet about it. We have ourselves to blame. I think this is one of the first steps that we are taking, having conversation like this, discussion, and hopefully writings. Yeah? The fact that I assemble and marshal all the writings coming from people who are not from my own area of specialization is simply because I would like to show that in a whole, in general, we already have facts about this. We need only to make it known to the rest. To make it known, you are right, Prof, back there, we must have it included in the school textbook, number one. Number two, in the school curriculum. And for that to happen, it's not easy. The mentality, the mind, what Syed Hussein Alatas sikap minda tertawan, the captive mind is still around us. Thank you so much. Okay, Prof. Zulfalil. Yes, please.
Terima kasih bagi Dato' Seri. Saya nak respon kepada
Silakan.
Yang pertama tentang di Austronesian tadi, bahasa dan Austronesian, Austronesian and Melayu Polynesian. So Minda Tertawan tadi, many of us, including us meaning including our group, scientists, the geneticists, in fact my group, the bigger group, the Pan-Asian group, we use the term Austronesian. But I'm so happy that I've met yang berbagai Dato' Seri Salleh Yaapar, who told me that we should come out from this Minda Tertawan. I mean, the scientist has been using the word Austronesian, but there is another term which is Melayu Polynesian. So that is I think the more appropriate term, which I think we should start using or start popularizing it. So it has to come from us. So we need to start using this term instead of Austronesian, and that's what I think our group is also doing. So itu komen saya atau my first opinion. My second one is regarding tadi lah yang DNA tadi. I just like to highlight the fact that DNA can just tell us, the data. Tapi how to make sense of the data? We have to correlate that. The scientists, the geneticists have to correlate that with the history, the anthropology, the language, and so forth. And that's what we have done. Tadi Dato Salleh pun ada highlight the paper that we published in Science, the Human Genome Organization, the group, the foundation group tadi, published in 2009. So we found that, as pointed out by Dato Salleh tadi, that Southeast Asia is where the geographical location of the main source of the population of the Asian population, East Asian population. So based on the haplotype analysis, we found that there is a decreasing diversity, haplotype diversity from south to north, meaning that south is Southeast Asia and the North Asia, China as well as Taiwan, South Korea and Japan. So meaning that the origin or the older population is from this region, the Southeast Asia, and to be more exact, the Malay Peninsula. But I think in the paper we stopped short of saying the region as Malay Peninsula. But that's what it implies. However, a few years later, there is another group of researchers who published another paper yang menyangkal this hypothesis. So like I said, genetic data, DNA data can just give the data. So it's up to us to interpret and make some sense into that data. So there will be groups that will try to disprove what we have found. So dengan saya, the student saya, Hatin, who published another paper, Wan Nur Hatin, she published another paper on the Malay sleep study tadi lah, yang kita bahagikan Melayu kepada Melayu Banjar tadi, Melayu Jawa, Melayu Minang, dan Melayu Bugis, dan maybe Hatin can highlight our findings. But basically, all these Malay subgroups, we call it, fall into one group. That is the Malay group. I'm not sure, Hatin, you want to add?
Okay.
Or maybe you can ask her.
Okay.
Over lunch.
Okay, over lunch. Okay.
Yeah, boleh. She wrote the paper, and banyak paper, I think our paper has been cited by many researchers, especially those who are studying.
There was an article by Marina Mahdi a few years back about each customer that you were referring to, and she was citing like Center US, saying that whatever we found was not true, but the government hid the information because, mandatory.
Well, in fact, 2009, that paper, the science paper, in fact, if you remember, masa tu there was a big election, and banyak dalam, especially the opposition portal, they used this paper to say that Melayus are in fact pendatang. But that was a misquotation of the actual finding of the paper. But what I'm referring to the subsequent paper by another group, I think 2013 or probably, maybe I think 2014, I think I can highlight about this paper, why they disagree with the finding.
The Chinese were real first in Islam. The Chinese she was debunked. I think 2015 it came out in
Prof, there is always the political side to everything.
Prof.
All right, Prof.
Yes, it's a good suggestion to use the definition Malayo-Polynesian rather than Austronesian. I am wondering how the word Austronesian came about. You mentioned about glacial, maximum, the glacial age. But the ice age actually is more than once, isn't it? So, when I visited the Museum of Natural History in Stockholm in 2010, I was on holiday when I visited. I noticed they showed a chart that the early humans actually moved before one ice age in all directions from Africa. And then, of course, this is contested from the Islamic point of view. But to me, my belief is that Allah made everyone to be different, perhaps through a process also, through a process, not that Allah plonked in these people here, that people here, that people here. So, in that description of movement, those who move towards our direction and towards Australia are then termed as Austronesian, because the word austral is actually southwards. So that could be it. The other one I want to raise, I want to just counter check, and I hope to interact with some of you later privately, is this definition of races. The one I mentioned about the US judge declaring, actually he was quoting someone by the name of Blumenthal, a Dutch, whatever he is, anthropologist and so on, in the 18th century, who categorizes the race. And then the Malays have been categorized. Is that categorization applicable, and is it in line with what you have shown? So I think that's all. I wouldn't.
Okay, thank you very much. I would like to hear something from Prof. Rahma. Hold on, Prof. Rahma. Wait, sir. After Prof. Rahma, you can see.
Origins. So I'm very, very pleased that you have initiated this talk, and from your talk as usual is very unique. So yeah, from this we must increase the number of such activities.
Prof. Hafiz,
more frequently, inshallah.
Prof. Hafiz, we should work closely with reveal knowledge. Thanks, Prof. Rahma, being the dean of the new dean. Yeah? I must now congratulate you as new deans of the Faculty of Reveal Knowledge. Yes, Prof. At the back again.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Lalu kita balik kepada buku-buku Arab. Buku-buku Arab seperti Ibn Battuta dan apa dia, Ibn Battuta dia tidak ada, tak menamakan Melayu, tapi Ibn Battuta memberi nama apa dia area ini ataupun sekitar ini Al-Jawa. Dia tidak ada kalimah Melayu. Jadi kalimah Jawa ni umum, bukan orang Jawa, tidak. Jadi umum Melayu ni namakan Jawa dalam buku Ibn Battuta. Dan satu lagi dalam buku Arab, kalau campak dia panggil Sam, S-A-N-F. Itu Sam campak yang ada sekarang. Kamboja, bukan Kamboja. Kamboja, campak bukan di Kamboja. Campak di Vietnam, di selatan Vietnam. Itu dia. Itulah bermakna kalimah Melayu kalau orang Arab, dia tak tahu Malaysia dululah. Abad 12, 18 tak ada. Yang tahu ialah Ummatul Melayu, satu umat dinamakan Melayu. Di antara bukunya Jaudah Salleh yang tulis Ummatul Melayu. Jadi termasuk Melayu Malaysia sekarang, Indonesia, Singapura, Brunei dan Pakistan. Sekian, terima kasih banyak.
Terima kasih. Itu satu lagi angle ya. Boleh saya serahkan balik pada Prof? Oh, okay. Oh. Our sister here.
When I listen to theory about Stephen Hawking,
Yeah.
he says that the Sudan submerged due to large flood. So I cannot help but think about Prophet Noah. So do you think there's any relation to because through time scientific discoveries has always confirmed stories in the Quran, so I wonder if this could be one of them.
There is a possibility, but since I have not studied it along that line, so I do not want to commit myself. But stories about the flood is worldwide, actually. It's worldwide. Thank you very much. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you very much. I'm not going to comment. And on behalf of everybody here, we would like to thank Prof. Dato Seri, Salleh Yaapar. Inshallah, this will be a series. And the center is actually based at Jalan Damansara. And probably in the future, some program will organize in Jalan Damansara, the old estate. Prof. Salleh is our distinguished fellow at the center. And inshallah, we'll be organizing more program in the future. And on behalf of the organizer, we'd like to thank everybody for coming. We actually do not anticipate that the numbers will be this many. People come from near and far, and alhamdulillah. And I hand over the session back to our MC, Dr. Mahmudul.
So again, on behalf of the Center for Malay World and Islamic Civilization and its Department of English Language and Literature, we express our heartfelt thanks to all of you for coming.
Oh,